Ralph had to come up here and help the technically challenged. So my name's Mike Schwartz. I'm this year's president of Measurement Science Conference. And first off, I want to thank everybody for coming out here. You guys have really made this show work. I'm proud to announce that we're right now 27% over last year's attendance. So that's a nice increase. And I think the applause goes out to our instructors that we have. We have 4 NIST instructors, 4 NIST classes out here. We have 24 tutorials, and that's what most of the people are in here for today. Tonight, we're going to start welcoming the exhibitors, so the exhibit hall will have a nice reception coming in here for those guys. We also have for the next couple days, we have 21 tech sessions. We just added a new tech session of lab process improvement from Ginger Hazard from the Navy. So if you guys are working on doing business with the government, she's going to talk about how to use the government websites and do business with the government in general. So that's going to be a really good class. It's tomorrow morning if anybody's wanting to reach out and grab that. One of the things I want to say is your drink tickets. Right? Everybody in here should have got a drink ticket for tonight. Those drink tickets are 1-for-1 for alcohol or for beer and wine. They're 2-for-1 if you want something non-alcoholic. So when you pass off the ticket, if you're non-alcoholic, make sure you grab both of them at that time. So the other thing to announce is we have a friend of mine, personal friend. We've worked with each other for now, 5 years? 6? Yeah, we've been since 2019. That much I can park. Yes. Yeah, and we're still friends after working with me, so that's a good thing. So Helena Stevens, she's got a PhD in counselor education and supervision. She has plus 20 years in all areas of education at all levels. She's a lead test developer at Sign Calibration, as Sign Calibration is building out their testing and their training courses. And she's also her father, which is very interesting to see somebody in education at that level. Her father, Joseph Radone, has been in calibration for more than 40 years. And he's over 70, and he just got a new job at another calibration lab. So if we could give a hand for Helena.
Okay, and if you were just a part of my 4-hour tutorial and you want to just concentrate on eating and not hearing me be repetitive, totally understandable. But, okay. Good afternoon to all of you. It really is an honor to be up here for the opening keynote. You know what, I'm going to do this because that makes more sense. It is an honor to be up here. This is not my field of expertise, so to be kicking off an event with a group of people who I think are much more important than I am. You're so important to the bedrocks and the fabric of society. It's very humbling to be up here to talk about my area of expertise and to kick off this event. So as Mike mentioned, I'm not a metrologist, but rather I'm a daughter of one. And up until about 5 or 6 years ago when I started working with Sign, I genuinely really didn't know what metrologists did, despite my father being one. The take your daughter to work day, all I remember is it was super early in the morning because some of you techs and leaders work at 5 and 6 in the morning, and when you're a teenager, that's really the most awful thing in the world. So that's what I remember. And there was a piece of equipment that could tune into radio stations, which when you're a teenager, that's also super important. And kind of shamefully to say, that's all I really knew about calibration. But my areas of expertise are in education, counseling, training, and supervision, which, shocker, I'm the daughter of a Marine. I chose to focus on talking about feelings and training others how to talk about feelings. And so what does that say about my childhood? Probably more than I need to. But through my father, I was very lucky to make connections with people like Ryan in the back, who is live streaming this, and Mike because they were looking for a person like me. As they have developed a training company from the ground up and are seeking accreditation, they needed somebody who could do test development, or a fun word that we all learned, psychometrology. I'm a psychometrician. And what that means is I specialize in testing, assessment, and research. So I joined on with Sign because of the skills and knowledge that I bring. And through the years, I've been very lucky to collaborate with them on the education side of things. So I'm fortunate to come in here with those years of experience and training at all levels of education. So when I first started to learn about metrology and calibration, I was honestly baffled for two reasons. One, that I was very ignorant to how important it is to society and my day-to-day functioning. And the second reason why I was baffled is because there isn't a formal education program or degree pathway. My entire career has been built in higher education, and I'm familiar with a lot of engineering and STEM training programs. And as I understand the importance of metrology, I'm still baffled that there isn't a formal higher education training program. And every time I share that when I'm either at MSC or talking to other calibrators, I get a lot of head nods. It is a bit perplexing. I understand, or at least I understood that there's some on-the-job training, but that was my beginning understanding. And now, as I get further into it and I learn more, I'm still at this point of passion of there needs to be something legitimate. There needs to be something robust, because as I first started understanding metrology, I'm like, okay, it's a gas pump's ability to accurately disperse the amount of gas that I'm paying for. And when gas is $5 a gallon, that's pretty dang important, right? Or I'm buying fruit at the grocery store and I'm putting it on the scale. And when you've got kids and you're trying to raise a family, every penny counts. So I'm like, okay, that's really important. Well, the longer I've been learning about it, it became even more important. And so I wanted to share kind of a funny story of what happened. So I'm a mom, and like most middle-aged moms, we're trying to get back into shape, right? New year, new me kind of thing. And I'm at the nutrition store to buy some protein powder. And I'm going up to pay for the powder, and the young kid behind the counter who's been trained to sell me on all the products, and he's trying to, push the agenda, says, there's a scale over here, and if you step on that, it's gonna tell you all these kinds of metrics. And it's like 8 o'clock at night, and so my thought is, well, I'm not trying to choose violence for myself tonight and go step on a scale, thank you. But my second honest to God thought was, when's the last time you calibrated it? When's the last time it was updated, and how accurate is it actually? And everything just kind of clicked in that moment for me of, oh my God, you guys are insanely important to like every aspect of my normie routine life. And I'm a bit of a theorist, so that kept rabbit holing a little bit deeper. And I wanted to share a second part of this story to hopefully connect to you why you're so important to, again, the bedrocks of society. So I train mental health counselors because counseling is my background. And think about that scale. So for some individuals, that scale is the most important part of their day, usually not for positive reasons. But I want you to picture a young female, young adult. And every morning she's gonna step on that scale and it's gonna tell her a number. And for the rest of that day, that number is gonna dictate everything she does, the food choices that she makes. And she's gonna put that food on a scale, and it's gonna tell her how much food she's eating for some meal plan that's been calibrated for her by that nutrition expert at the store. And that's gonna then fuel the rest of her day. Did I eat more than I'm supposed to? Am I eating as much as I'm supposed to? And then as she's cooking that dry chicken breast, she's gonna put a thermometer inside it to make sure she doesn't get salmonella, because in addition to a depressing meal plan, nobody also wants to get sick off of dry chicken. And then she's gonna put that protein powder that kid sold me on into a shaker bottle that's been calibrated to measure accurately how much protein you're intaking. And then we're gonna wake up, repeat, recycle, rinse, and do it all over again. But this isn't healthy. So this young girl is gonna end up in mental health counseling for a host of mental health issues. And that experience is going to be positive. And then that young girl then becomes my student in a counseling training program, and she's gonna be a phenomenal counselor, and that's a true story. And it all started with a scale. It all started with measurement. And the point of that story is not to demonize the scale, because that's not what this conference is about, but it's to just provide some depth into how important you guys are to the functioning of society. And just like my field needed to be legitimized with standards and training and education, I'm going to make the same argument for you all. And since there isn't a formal training pathway program, since there isn't a higher education degree program, we have to embrace that and accept it's you guys, your labs, your companies, you are responsible for legitimizing these training approaches because of how important you are to literally every functioning in our society. You have to seek a counselor. You have to find a counselor. I don't have to seek calibration. It's literally in my hands every single day. So, we have to embrace the problem. And I'm going to take it a step further and make an argument that because ISO 17025 is the big standard, if we're not legitimizing training programs within our labs, within our companies, then we're not compliant with that standard. And I feel a little nervous making that claim, to be honest, but in everything I've learned in these last 6 years and in coming to MSC, I feel more confident to stand up here and say that today. And so I'm going to elaborate further on what it would mean to address that standard, bringing in my world, my area of expertise, and as Mark said, to give you some bubble gum for the brain, because I can't solve it all today, and I couldn't even solve it all in my last 4-hour presentation. But if I can give you some inspiration, some ideas, and some hope, I hope that you'll remember some of the stories I've shared up here to give you that encouragement because you are so important for our society. So putting some context to the problem, as I've already said, there's no formal training programs. And because of that, you have limited pipelines. There is some of a you get what you get in the field. And I can actually understand that in higher education because although I teach at a master's level, we don't have an inherent pipeline for counseling. Psychology is not our pipeline. There's no bachelor level for counseling. So we get a lot of people from a lot of backgrounds and areas of life. And that's fine because we decided it was our job to train them. So I'm really pushing this notion on you guys today. You have to decide that it is your responsibility at some level to do this. Whether you are at the entry level or if you're here because you own a company or you're at an administrative leadership level, it's your responsibility. Excuse me. But an inherent problem in that is that, and this point has been enhanced every time I come to MSC, there isn't an internal infrastructure. There's limited external collaborations and support systems, and there's minimal, if anything, internally at times. Another big part of the problem, and this was really enhanced today as I've learned from you guys, people who are maybe responsible for giving training or are responsible for administration and oversight don't have any education, expertise, or training in these disciplines that I'm saying are important. Supervision, management, program implementation. These are all things inherent in my field, but they're not necessarily inherent in yours. And so there's a lot of kind of figuring it out as we go, guessing as we go, and putting out fires. And I've also learned from a lot of you it's not sustainable. It's not effective. And if the end goal is that our day-to-day functioning is efficient and accurately measured, then we've got to do something different. So starting with the very beginning of the standard is general requirements. Competence. There's a lot of risk involved when we're not doing legitimized procedures. Within the standard, you've got structural requirements. That's your management, your organization. You've got resource requirements, people, personnel. There's a responsibility to the people in your company at every single level. We have process requirements, your validation, your quality control, your use of data, and then management system requirements, overall quality management. Training fits into every single one of these standards. And I know that it's a really tall task to throw it out there and say your companies need to flex, they need to transform, and they need to update. But the longer I'm doing this, the more I keep coming to this, the more this passion grows of you're so important to us, you have to take this on if you're going to be compliant with the standard that continues to drive everything. So where do you start? Within our general requirements is the mission. When's the last time you looked at your company's mission? When's the last time you looked at your lab's vision? If you're newer to the field, do you have an answer? Do you know what the mission and vision is? If you're at the higher level and you're responsible for these things, how are you including training and education? Because we've already determined, well, there isn't an outside pipeline, so it's y'all. Is this inherent in your mission and vision? Is this inherent in your leadership structure? And if the answer is no, that's okay. But where do you go from here? Where do you start building it into the foundation of basically every function of your company? Because training and education isn't a one-time thing. You can have a bachelor's degree and you can go into the field and there's still a lot left to learn. And what I've learned from individuals at the bachelor's level in engineering programs is there's a lot of on-the-job training that still needs to happen, but what they really don't like is that they have to do it themselves. It's exhausting, it's overwhelming, it's time-consuming, and it doesn't make them feel supported. It doesn't make them feel invested in. So it's not just that one moment in time that somebody comes in, it's for the duration of their career with you. But how does your mission and vision reflect that? The next solution, if we're thinking about resource requirement, is we have to stop winging it. I understand that you get what you get, right? Retention is hard. Recruitment is hard. Attrition is high. There's a bit of a revolving door. But there are controllable reasons to prevent that revolving door from continuing to cycle. And that goes into our resource requirement. We have to invest in systematic approaches. We have to invest in building infrastructure. And we have to invest at people at every point in their career, entry, mid, senior, supporting them for their developmental needs with deliberate approaches. So that then goes into leadership and supervision. My biggest takeaway this year, I always have a big takeaway, is that there's a big disconnection between those who are at the leadership levels, human resources, or as I call it, administration, those who are doing the training and education work, those who are tasked with it, and then those who are at the entry level on the receiving end. There's not continuity. There's minimal cohesion. And that was a big pill for me to swallow as I'm promoting these models and promoting these theories is all of that is good and fine and fair, but if you guys are not unified as a team, it doesn't matter how good my model is. It doesn't matter how good a theory is. If senior leadership says, go figure it out, I don't want to hear about it, and then your mid-level guy says, I don't want this tech to be a problem, well then you've got one guy out here on an island chasing the back of his heels going, how do I make everybody happy? But nobody wants to talk to me. Nobody wants to play in the sand with me. Everybody wants to be left alone to figure it out. You're not supporting that one person, but you are burning them out. You are pushing them towards the revolving door. And then that tech, who probably wants to do really well, who usually wants to keep his job, is also trying to figure out what exactly do you want from me? And what exactly do you need from me? But nobody is in harmony. And that's a large infrastructural issue that I don't have the time to solve today, but I hope by bringing visibility to it, because it's been brought to my attention, you guys will walk away with some more bubble gum on the brain to chew on to go, when's the last time I talked to so-and-so? When is the last time I had a team meeting? When is the last time I sat with a tech to really understand what they need? But inevitable in all of this is training your personnel. If you're asking somebody to be a supervisor, have you trained them in supervision theory? If you're asking somebody to be a trainer, have you trained them to be a trainer? If you're asking them to do audits and assessment, have you trained them to do those things? Or do you just expect them to figure it out? And is there any kind of compensation? Is there any kind of reallocation of time? We can't continue to ask people to do more with less or more just because we think they're capable of it. Our workplace culture is insanely important. And that leads us to process requirements. Training needs analysis. So I'm on the test development side of SIGN, and assessment and analysis is a core function of what I do as an educator because I'm in a training program, and I can confidently tell you, nobody wants to do this. If we're gonna lose customers, it's because, right, Ryan, we get to this point and they go, we don't wanna do this part. And there's, I think, a couple of reasons why. Knowledge is power, but knowledge is also a challenge. If you are finding out in the beginning that your calibrators do not know a lot, well, then the responsibility buck gets pushed even further. You got a lot of work to do. And that's okay, because it's kind of not okay to just send them out there and expect, well, they're going to figure it out and someone's going to teach them and we'll just keep putting out fires. So we have got to do training needs analysis. We have got to do routine assessments. And I can firsthand tell you this is probably one of my least favorite aspects of my job. I know exactly when it's going to happen. I know exactly how long it's going to take. I don't look forward to it any bit more every time it comes around 3 times a year. But the blessing side of it is I know exactly what I'm working with. I know what my classes need to entail. I know what my education approaches have to have. I know what the needs are of my students so that we don't reach a year in and we go, what are we going to do now? We've reached this point. I need them to advance. I need them to excel. I want to move them from a level 1 to a level 2 so they're more of a leader. They take more initiative, but I don't know why they're stuck and I don't know how. I don't have to worry about that because as laborious and painful as assessment is, we're doing it. If you're going to provide systematic training, intentional and deliberate approaches to get your techs to a performative level that is proficient, you need to know what they need. So you have to assess them. You have to analyze their performance and figure out what you're going to do with education. And like I said, this part is the least preferred. It's time consuming and it requires a lot of effort on everyone's end. But that what you do on the front end is going to save you on the back end. So if we're addressing process requirements of the standard, we have to assess our people. And you need to know that you're not alone. There's a lot, what I pull away every time I sit and I talk with you guys is that you're all in this together. You all understand, you all recognize. So there's an opportunity to collaborate. And there are companies that are already doing this work, for example, sign calibration. We have tests, we have education. You're not alone. And you just got to remember that. So moving into our management system requirements is to build the infrastructure. You have to build one. If your mission and vision is inclusive of training, if you're supporting your personnel to be able to deliver training, if you're figuring out what your people need, the next inevitable step is to build your education and training programs. And I want everyone to hear me when I say I'm not up here going, you should already know how to do this. Yes, this should be done, of course, but I'm not up here to point a finger and say, you should already know how to do this. If that was the case, Mike would be delivering the keynote right now, right? But no, he asked me to come up. There are outside experts in other disciplines who can come in and consult and support with the building and the management of this because you're not alone out here in this world. And I wanted to give you a real specific example of what this can look like. We have a model in my field. It's called multi-tiered intervention systems of support, and it conceptualizes training and education at 3 different levels. The first level is your universal. Standard operating procedures. All techs, all staff are going to receive a systematic level of training that is relevant to get them on board to a proficient level to execute some of the necessary functions at the lab. You assume to do that right away. As soon as you hire them and you're doing your training needs analysis, you know, I've got to give this education. But it's not just you. Like I said, there are outside companies and other agencies that have education that you can systematically deliver. You don't have to tax all of your personnel. We bring in adjuncts all the time in higher education so that we're not overexhausting ourselves and our resources. Play with your friends. You're giving the baseline assessments and you're doing regular checks to ensure that your techs are meeting the minimum standards. There's a lot of work on the front end, but it saves you so much on the back end. So that by year 1, year 2, with these technicians, they're where you want them to be. The consensus today was we want them to be autonomous. We want them to be critical thinkers. We want them to be able to problem solve. We want them to have some intuition and forward thinking. Well, for some people that doesn't develop on their own. You have to help them get there. And you can't just throw them to the wolves. You have to systematically get them to the cave. So you start with a level 1. What is the basic minimum that everybody needs? You tailor it to your own system. I selfishly am glad that you guys don't have programs in higher education because sometimes higher education is where good things die. Standards are good, all right? I'm all about standards driven. But I'm bound to my accreditation standards, and I have no freedom and no control over changing them or doing anything different. I have to follow what all these people out there in the constellations tell me to. You guys don't have to live by that and fall by that sword. You have the freedom to make this work for you. But it's about conceptualizing. It's about vision. When you bring these people in because you know they come from all backgrounds of life, what is the basic minimum that they're going to need, and how are you going to give it to them? Then you can get to your level 2. If we want them to move across the spectrum from entry level to mid and senior, you are responsible for getting them through that. You would think that students coming into graduate school would already kind of be level 2 and 3, and the reality is they're not. We have a lot of work that we have to do on our end to get them ready in the field to go provide the important care that they're providing. And that's okay, because that's what we're trained to do. You guys are experts. You've been doing this in your career for how many years, Mike? How many years have you been in the field? 25. You can train somebody. You can get them along. So you got to have confidence in yourself that you guys are totally capable of doing this. Again, it's about how are you envisioning it. If you want a select few to become leaders so that you're not doing all of the work, you got to get them there. So you start thinking about, what do they need in between? How am I going to focus more training and education for them so that they can then do what I'm doing, train that trainer? How are you mentoring them? Another big theme today was about relationships. How do you build relationships with the people in your labs? How are you mentoring them? How are you supervising them? How are you these are like big buzzwords, right? Empower them, cultivate them. But there's a lot of truth in it. They're not just technicians. They're not just equipment operators. They're people too. And when you invest in them as a person, through mentoring and relationship building, you are opening up something for them mentally that's going to help them to honestly be the best calibrator that they can be. And that's what I've experienced with some of my most difficult students, where I was just so looking forward to them graduating. Like, that was the best part of the program, was they were going to graduate and I was going to be done with them. Well, your techs don't graduate, they stay. But when you pull yourself back and you go, okay, what's going on with you? What do you need? How can I support you kind of holistically? It is amazing how people can grow and transform with just a little bit of investment in them. So that's your tier 2. Who are you investing in? Well, all of them, essentially. But there will be a select few where you can see, maybe you're meant to be a trainer. Maybe you're meant to be a leader. And how can I just focus a little bit more of my time on the front end, so on the back end, they're able to give more. At the 3rd tier, it's more of that intensive work. Sometimes it's technicians who continue to struggle. Sometimes it's technicians who are ready to thrive at a more advanced level. It's more one-to-one. We're tailoring maybe improvement plans or remediation plans. And without inundating you with too much theory, what's important to me about this component here is that it's the intention to keep somebody. It is the intention and the deliberateness to invest in them. Sometimes we reach points where we start to think, maybe you're not cut out for the field, or maybe this isn't meant for you. But as I understand it, that's really hard to be able to fire somebody. It's nearly impossible for us to get rid of students in grad programs, even if I feel like they're not going to be the best. There's too much red tape. There's too much legality to it. So we're kind of forced to figure it out. Well, what if your mindset in the beginning was, I choose to figure this out until I have enough reason to not figure it out? That means you're taking the extra time, again, to invest in supporting your individuals. So this model in and of itself takes a very long time to teach. But my point in bringing it in was, I wanted you to see what opportunities there are, and that there are different levels of need. It's not just bring them in and we'll kind of figure it out as we go. There's different systematic approaches that need to be taken if we are really honoring the standard that is driving just about everything. And I also wanted to give you a creative idea to think about, because I really resonate with the lack of pipelines for recruitment. And I've worked in career education, I've worked in high school settings, I've worked in college centers that focused on recruitment. And so I had some ideas that I think are a little bit creative that I wanted to give you. If you don't need to have a formal education to be a calibrator, then anybody's kind of fair game, I think. So think about some of your secondary schools, your high schools, that have more of a technical and STEM focus. How can you create partnerships within your community? Because there are already programs out there at the high school level for kids to get involved with STEM-focused fields. How can you partner with them? How can you start building relationships with these high schoolers? Because this generation is a little bit different. We talked earlier about how people maybe aren't so different, but the experiences we're having in our society are different. And the kids these days don't like the idea of having to go to school for 4 to 6 years. And I don't blame them for that. Although school is my livelihood, I don't blame them for that. Retention in higher education and recruitment in higher education is really struggling because kids don't want to go to school for that long. Well, now they don't have to. They can go straight into the field. That's an attractive entry point. And you have kids that are already focusing in STEM areas. How can you build some relationships? There are associate level degree programs that are going to give some relative skills to these individuals. How are you a part of internship fairs? How are you a part of career fairs? There's a lot of opportunities, especially at the bachelor level, where you can get involved with engineering programs, engineering training. And it may not specifically be calibration, but I'm learning there's a lot of relevant skills in these different disciplines. And that will make the training side on yours just a little bit easier when you've got minds that are already geared towards some of the disciplines that you are teaching. So, in conclusion for today, I feel like I gave a lot of information, and I hope what you heard in all of this is, A, you have the responsibility, but B, you have the ability to do this. We're honoring the standard that drives us all. It means that we have to take time to invest in resituating and reorganizing our companies, and you're not alone. So, thank you all for your time.
So I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. We're going to do some questions.